My name is Alissa Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Last time on Voices for Justice, we discussed Thomas Heimer's confession to killing Alissa, and we ended with how I was dealing with everything while the investigation was happening, including the beginning of my change of heart about supporting my father. In this episode, we're going to discuss the ongoing police investigation, including their response to that change of heart, the confrontation I had with my father about this, a letter written to my father by the chief of police, an entire seminar the police plan to participate in speaking about my father's possible involvement in Alissa's case, and so much more. I'm often asked what changed my mind about supporting my father, and I always say, it really wasn't just one thing. It was a slow build over time. When I went on ABC 2020, and when I testified in my father's bomb trial, I defended him heavily, because that's what I truly believed. At that time, I couldn't even believe that Alissa could be dead. I wouldn't let myself believe. I even wrote about it in college. I remember a particular essay in which I wrote about my belief that Alissa was alive, and that I hoped that she was on a beach somewhere sipping margaritas. And I told the exact same thing to ABC 2020. But slowly over time, this belief was outshadowed by the cold, hard truth of the situation. As much as I wish my brothers would participate in this podcast, they won't. And as much as I don't wish to speak for them, in this case, I have to. I have to tell you that I was the last of my father's children to believe he could have something to do with Alissa's disappearance. When I went to my brothers and told them about my change of heart, there was no shock or attempts to convince me otherwise, just sympathy and understanding. It was just like when I asked my boyfriend what he thought. It appears I truly was the last one to hold out hope that our father wasn't involved in Alissa's disappearance in any way. But the proof was stacked against him, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to confront him. So I waited for my father's next phone call from prison, ready for this confrontation. I wish I had thought to record it, but I didn't. At this time, I wasn't recording anything, because I really didn't have a reason to. But as far as I can remember, I asked him something to the effect of, "Why doesn't your story add up?" I would ask him questions about Alissa's last day, why he never told me she was taken out of school early, why the note seemed so weird, why there were allegations of abuse. But he just avoided it. He would skate around the questions and try to resume a normal conversation. I don't know how many times I tried to get answers from him, but eventually I gave up, and our communication became a lot less frequent. Every time I spoke to him was painful. So I avoided it and eventually stopped helping him altogether. And shortly after my change of heart in 2012, I expressed my belief to the police that I was no longer completely certain that my father didn't have anything to do with Alissa's disappearance. And I wrote an email to Detective Summershoe and Detective Anderson, stating, quote, "I told my father I don't know what to believe, how to feel about him anymore, or what to think of the entire story. Too many holes. These types of confrontations have yielded nothing satisfactory," end quote. And after this, I actually became quite close with Detective Summershoe and Anderson. We exchanged countless emails and phone calls about the case. We wished each other happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, and they typically wished me the best on the anniversary of Alissa's disappearance. I felt like I had a great relationship with them. At some point, after coming around and seeing the realities of Alissa's case, I was told that my father would be arrested for Alissa's murder upon his release from prison. It was explained to me that the reason they were hesitant to charge him while he was still in prison for the bomb charge was due to the fact that it was possible that he would be able to combine his bomb charge sentence with the sentence he may receive for Alissa's murder, resulting in him ultimately serving less prison time. So in an effort to maximize his sentence, they were waiting for him to be released from prison to formally charge him. To be honest, I had mixed emotions about this. Of course I wanted justice for Alissa. She deserves it. and I was willing to help in any way possible to obtain this justice for her. But it still hurt my heart to know that the man I once considered to be my hero, my best friend, and the person that I felt cared for me most in this world would be ripped away from me just like so many others had. But ultimately, I knew it was the right thing to do. The fact that my father could be a pedophile and murderer outshadowed any possible loyalty or love for him. It was as simple as that. It hurt greatly and continues to hurt my heart to this day. But Alissa deserves justice. This podcast was designed to be an open, honest conversation about Alissa's case, and I try to ensure that I have full-proof evidence for the majority of the items I present. However, at this time, like I said, I wasn't recording police conversations like I do now. I didn't feel I had a reason to. I trusted the Phoenix police and the detectives. In addition to not having audio of this conversation, I also can't find any emails explicitly describing or referring to it. But I wasn't the only one they told my father would be prosecuted for Alissa's murder. Several people have come forward and stated they were told the same thing. And one witness that was extremely close to Alissa, that I have never named due to her extreme fear of my father, told me that when she was repeatedly asked to interview for police, they eased her fear by telling her that my father would never get out of prison. It was only then that she felt comfortable enough to come forward with her information. And honestly, my mind was put to ease also. I didn't understand and still don't fully understand the inner workings of the justice system, but the reasoning to wait seemed valid to me, and I really believed, and still do believe, that Detective Summershoe and Detective Anderson want my father to finally go to court to answer for Alissa's disappearance. So I helped them in any way I could in an effort to further build the case. I sent them a variety of tips, leads, emails, contact form submissions, and everything under the sun that I thought could be helpful, including a map I found. In 2013, while cleaning out some boxes that sat on my back porch untouched for years after moving into my home, I found a map of California that wasn't taken by the police in the raid. The map contained notes written by my father, and certain locations were circled. My boyfriend Googled the longitude and latitude of these locations and found that they appeared to be in the middle of nowhere. I freaked out and immediately offered the map to the detectives. I was still coping with the fact that my father could be responsible, and I didn't want to speculate in any capacity as to what that map meant. I wanted the professionals to handle it, so I mailed it to them as quickly as possible. And if I'm being honest, I tried not to think about it. And on June 3rd, 2013, Detective Anderson wrote me the following email, quote, "Sarah, I received the map yesterday afternoon. I'm looking over it now. Any memory of scouting trips to those areas marked in the map? Moreno Valley, Riverside, Gardenia, Torrance? Did you drive with him just the one time in the Mustang, or were there other trips? Your father spoke of driving through the ghetto. I guess there are some spotty areas in all communities. I still don't buy Alissa traveling so far and then dropping $4 in change into a payphone for a 20-second call. Detective Anderson." End quote. And the same day, I wrote back, quote, "Thank you for taking the time to check it out. I'm afraid I can barely remember that time. I don't remember where in California, but I remember going to a mall to hand out flyers. I also can't quite remember how many times we went. I want to say one time, but it could have been 2 times that I had gone with him. I remember he rented the car to drive to California, saying he had always wanted to drive on the coast in a convertible, and this was the reasoning for the rental. As far as locations, I think he picked Torrance because he thought one of my aunts had lived there, and Alissa could be hiding out there. And I remember him saying that he had to go alone into the barrio on other trips, but unfortunately, that's all I can recall. And as far as the phone call, I thought my father fought the phone company to get the phone records and the call actually happened. I never bothered to look for myself, but I remember it was a huge battle for my father, and he was very upset because the records were not easier to obtain. I wish I could be of more help. There are so many situations I can't remember. I don't know if I was too young and didn't fully comprehend it or just ignored it. Since our final interview, it resonates in my mind that I just can't recall these situations, and have been trying to challenge my mind, and I still can't make sense of it. It's still all very confusing. I was the closest with my sister out of 5 siblings, and I still can't figure it out. But I thank you for still trying. Let me know if there's anything else I can help with. Best, Sarah Turney." End quote. To which Detective Anderson responded, quote, "Sarah, Mike said he had rented a Mustang in the hopes that Alissa would approach the car. One of her boyfriends from Jack in the Box had a Mustang at that time, and she was fascinated by the vehicle. As far as the phone call is concerned, I know it did happen. Your father sued the phone company demanding they provide 3 months' worth of records and stop the process of selling records to other services. The phone company found that excessive, but gave him the day in question to make it go away. They didn't want a staff attorney burning hours on the case. It could have been settled much sooner, but I think Mike was seeing dollar signs. He talks on the tapes about coming into, quote, big bucks, end quote. Mike said he called the number until someone answered and gave him the address. I would have expected him to contact local police and request that they put a hold on the video surveillance, or even interview the clerk. Surely Alissa wasn't walking around with pockets full of change. Your home phone has had calls from that area before, and John was working for a company based in the same area/area code. I've spoken to former managers who assisted in tracking down employees that have called in before, sometimes on cell phones and sometimes with payphones. My concern with the call is that there was no recording. I have you ordering pizza and talking to Renee and even work calls for John. I have issues with this unexpected call not being picked up on the automatic recording device. When I asked your dad about it, he said he wasn't familiar with the last return call feature or directory assistance. Your phone records and recordings show that he used both services extensively before and after the payphone call. Sorry to belabor the point. I know this isn't comfortable for you. I just wish he would explain what happened. Detective Anderson. End quote. To which I write back, quote, Detective, I wish he would explain also. My father knows that I don't trust him, so I doubt he would ever confide in me with any secret he may have. We have certainly grown apart over these almost 5 years. Best, Sarah Turney. End quote. To which Detective Anderson responded, quote, I am sad for your loss too, Sarah. I will be in touch with any news. Detective Anderson. End quote. But, as far as I know, nothing ever came from that map, and I was unable to locate any documents to lead me to believe that the locations were physically searched. It's important to note that 2013 is also the year that the headings at the top of each police report in Alissa's file were retitled from missing juvenile to missing person, likely homicide, from here on out. There's no note about the case being officially reclassified or retitled, it's just something I noticed in the case file. From 2013 to 2015, there isn't a ton of movement in the case file. They were reviewing evidence, dealing with new leads and tips, but nothing of great note really happens until 2015. My father had enacted his right to remain silent when he was first arrested in 2008. But the police wanted to try again. So Detective Anderson writes my father the following letter on August 5th, 2015. Quote, Mr. Turney, I hope this letter finds you healthy and in better spirits. Detective Summershoe and I continue to investigate the disappearance of Alissa. We still believe you can offer information that will help to resolve Alissa's case and bring peace to her family. As before, we welcome the opportunity to speak with you about Alissa and the details surrounding her disappearance. We would hope that your time in custody has allowed you to reflect on this situation and that you may now be in a better state of mind. This letter is an open invitation for you to respond and begin an honest dialogue about Alissa's disappearance. Kindly respond with your willingness to participate in this investigation. Your facility has access to email. You are welcome to add my information as a contact for messaging. Should you prefer an alternate means of communication, we may provide envelopes and stamps or arrange for an in-person visit and recorded interview. Regards, Detective W. Anderson. End quote. The police report also states that as of August 13th, 2015, there had been no response from my father to that letter. So, the Phoenix chief of police stepped in and also wrote my father a letter requesting an interview. The police report states, quote, Michael Turney has refused all attempts to be interviewed or assist in this investigation. This letter was an attempt to discern if his state of mind has changed in the years since his sentencing. The letter read, Dear Mr. Turney, the Phoenix Police Department is investigating a missing person, Alissa Turney. We are writing this letter to see if you are willing to sit down for an interview regarding Alissa Turney. As you know, 14 years have passed since Alissa's disappearance. You have made statements to others about having information about what happened to Alissa. The detectives would like to talk to you about this. Your family and many others have been dealing with Alissa's disappearance for over a decade. The detectives believe you have information that could resolve this case and bring resolution to your family. If you are willing to meet with Detective Stuart Summershoe and Detective Will Anderson of the Family Investigations Bureau, Missing and Unidentified Persons Unit, please advise the jail staff and the detectives will make arrangements to visit with you. Sincerely, Joseph G. Yonner, Police Chief. End quote. The report goes on to state that a copy of this letter was scanned and emailed to one of the prison staff, and it was requested that my father be contacted in person to show him this letter and to get his reaction. And that's exactly what happened. The next portion of the report reads, quote, I spoke to Investigator Henry. He advised me that he met with Michael Turney in his cell on Friday. Turney expressed anger and hostility to myself and Detective Anderson. Investigator Henry characterized Turney as ranting and said he continued to speak discursively for almost a half hour. Turney said that he had received the letter and was composing a response. He stated he would be willing to meet with Detective Anderson and I, only if the interview was broadcast on live television, and both Detective Anderson and I were hooked up to polygraph machines during the interview. Turney also made statements that he was planning on killing himself when he was released because he had nothing left to live for. Investigator Henry said that he referred Turney to a psychologist because of these statements. Turney refused to cooperate in any way in furthering the investigation of his missing stepdaughter. End quote. And like the report reads, my father did eventually respond with his conditions to be interviewed, as well as his interpretation of how everything unfolded up to this point. His response reads, quote, Chief Yonner, I will not give an interview, exchange mail, or meet in person with any PPD representative, especially Anderson and Summershoe, unless we are live on national TV. You have shown a total lack of integrity and honor. The time of seeking my cooperation has come and gone. Too much valuable evidence and too many investigative leads have been lost due to a botched investigation. Your staff turned my daughter Alissa's runaway/disappearance into a 3-ring circus MTV reality show, blatantly assassinating my character by making me your one and only suspect. The creator of the largest bomb factory in the history of Arizona? This media hype and ABC's primetime crime investigative detective reality show of Alissa's family left little doubt in the minds of the viewer that I was the only suspect in a, quote, stepfather molests and murders his stepdaughter, end quote, freak show. This took away any chance of a pre-trial detainee's rights to a level playing field and unbiased legal process. I've tried cooperating with the Phoenix PD since 2001, begging for help right up to the day Summershoe and Anderson filed for a perjured affidavit to search my home, a house Alissa never lived in, after I let them search her personal belongings, but refused to let them search my home without probable cause. Everything was recorded on videotape, including the raid. However, your officers conveniently destroyed the tape. These recordings would have shown the world that I did cooperate with the PPD, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and the FBI. Your officers were in such a rush seeking evidence of the evil stepfather, which never existed. Any chance of finding evidence was lost. My only obsession with Alissa was to protect her rights under the IDEA Act in a state with the highest dropout and kickout rates in public schools, and in many cases, abuse and neglect of the learning impaired. I promised her mother I would do this before she died. It seems that your officers and the legal process haven't a clue what a promise or ardent care even mean. I offered my DNA sample at your North Central office when I transported Alissa's brother John and youngest sister Sarah for their DNA test. By the way, I was the one that demanded this, not you. You botched putting Alissa in the NCIC, lost the first set of dental records, and subsequently never followed up on any of your unidentified body reports to me. I was never offered a lie detector exam, even in 2006, when the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were clearly investigating me due to their perjured search warrant. ABC asked me if I would submit to a lie detector exam after I was put in the CCA prison/alleged detention center, where the pretrial detainees were treated worse than convicted felons in prison. I said I would if Anderson would take a lie detector exam before me. He refused. I had a video of a person not unlike Anderson or Summershoe's physical structure going over my back fence after I refused to let them search my house. The large dog door was broken into, but nothing seemed to be taken. There are emails of Anderson's off-color remarks about Alissa's learning disability, claiming that she did not have one. Had the videos with sound of the raid not been destroyed, you would have evidence of Anderson taunting me as I was being treated by the paramedics, about how he got into my house after I refused them access. Alissa's learning disability was real and was well documented since the second grade with paid tutoring. Her third grade teacher, Mrs. Boardman, set her up a 504 and IEP program to protect Alissa's rights under the IDEA Act. Mrs. Boardman, acting as a friend of the family, also interviewed Alissa about whether or not she had been molested or abused, and if so, by whom. This was after so many CPS invasions following the death of Alissa's mother. Why wasn't Mrs. Boardman on the ABC reality show, since they were trying to turn my obsession into a sexual one? Could it be because her husband is a Phoenix police officer? We both know to what extent one officer will go to protect another, don't we? After my brother shot his wife, the Phoenix PD dropped the case to protect the victim's brother, who was also Phoenix PD. Your deception continues. According to the FBI, Alissa's case is a homicide. ABC, the Phoenix Police, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children clearly referred to her as being dead. Other families have waited this long and longer for loved ones to appear. There is nothing you don't have already that I could offer you concerning your case. Too much time has expired. You got your interview produced by ABC to ask your questions, though it was more of an interrogation than an interview. At this time, any real evidence as to the true suspect was disappearing. Your office has 2 decades of reports of union harassment and threats against my family. You even tapped my phone numerous times trying to catch them. You ignored my concerns when Alissa ran away and refused to assist in finding her. I sent you monthly reports at a time when a real investigation was possible, and a list of leads might have brought results. You and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children refused to get me the number Alissa called from, and the location. I had to file a suit to get subpoena powers to get the numbers. $10,000 up front, and it took 6 weeks to get them. Too little, too late. You and your forensic psychologist also twisted the fact as to why I installed security cameras in the house. Alissa ran away after our trailer and go-kart were stolen, followed by a man trying to break into our home when my girls were home alone. You refused to make a report of this incident. In addition, ABC's reality TV show made no mention of the problems I faced with the union, even though I have proven their involvement. I was forced by them to retire by a federal job which was under national security. They had me fired 3 weeks before my wife passed away, in spite of the fact that I received a high-performance review accompanied by a promotion. I had won a case of retaliation for whistleblowing, and 2 federal workman's comp cases. One of those cases dealt with my own mental illness. After years of litigation and 6 MD psychiatric opinions, I was properly diagnosed. Your staff questioned me about my health issues. Sadly, the Bureau of Prisons does not acknowledge mental illness and refuse to have me evaluated by a psychiatrist/MD so as to set up a program. If it were someone with a heart condition, however, proper medical treatment would be provided. You went to the media and staged a raid of my house, hoping to find what you needed to convict me in Alissa's disappearance. Then after your fishing expedition search warrant failed, you began working solely off innuendos, rumors, and lies. Then there was the haphazard, reckless elimination of all investigative leads to give the appearance that I was the only possible suspect, assuring everyone the stepfather did it. I recall a similar case when the Phoenix PD did the trial by media assassination of character process, where all alleged suspects were eliminated. This corrupt, so-called investigation put a man on death row for 10 years, using good faith search warrants and hunches, tricking the victim/suspect to cooperate to possibly prove he was innocent. Of course, no one intended to help the man at all. When he did prove his innocence, I believe he was awarded a large settlement. Of course, such cases are rare against police departments, even when the suspect is convicted on questionable evidence or a complete total lack thereof altogether. What happened to constitutional rights? I'm sure your files are full of such cases. DNA testing proved you were wrong, and the real man who did the crime was not even considered a suspect. This brings me to the why. Why would the Phoenix Police Department, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and FBI need my recordings when they have their own? It would appear your raid was intended to gain evidence to show I had cooperated. Otherwise, why would a good investigator seek a search warrant before asking a potential suspect to take a lie detector exam? Why ask the court for DNA tests when the department already refused it? Let's look at another reason I might not cooperate. Deception has been used in the legal process by the public defender assigned to my case, under a premise of a 98% conviction rate. Everyone is considered guilty, and it is up to the pretrial detainee to prove otherwise. That is if he can survive the torturous Florence Detention Center, which is more of a prison than the one I'm in now. On my first meeting with my defender, he recommended a plea bargain without ever seeing one piece of evidence. He said it didn't matter if I had no memory of seeing plastic pipe bombs, and also because the judge assigned to me was pro-police. He admitted she was biased, but refused to file a petition to have her removed. He also refused to file an in-camera review of the evidence or motion to preserve the evidence you took illegally from my home. He also refused me a speedy trial motion, or to have someone investigate and prove how perjured and false the affidavit and search warrant was. Then after bail was denied, he refused me a bail hearing. Then I was sent to Washington for a mental competency evaluation that could have been done in Phoenix instead of Seattle to ensure a speedier trial. Therefore, I filed motions to remove this man as my defender and to preserve the evidence for appeal, in-camera evidence, and to stop the flight to Seattle without any anti-embolism stockings, which ended up causing very painful blood clots. I am very familiar with the pain of blood clots. I was diagnosed with bilateral massive pulmonary embolisms in 2004. These blood clots I obtained due to your not allowing me to have anti-embolism stockings went totally untreated. I was told to wait until I got to prison to get proper medical care. The judge then banned me from filing any more motions, stating that I had been provided with counsel, which, by the way, let me sit in prison 3 months before being sent to Seattle. So much for 70 days to trial. Upon return, the judge granted my motion to remove my public defender, but refused to remove him from the case, knowing I would not represent myself if she gave me another attorney. Although she was aware of my history with mental illness, she did not care if I could adequately handle my own defense against this deception, such as the bait-and-switch plea agreement. Shortly after I took control of the case, the prison put me in the hole. I was forced to go to the law library in chains and shackled from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. The library had books that required me to stand on a plastic chair to reach the top shelves. I eventually fell, just as I had from the bus at Sally Port. This was due to the way that the prison handcuffs their detainees, with their hands twisted backwards, making it impossible to use the handrails. It was either this or accept the plea agreement. After the emergency room visit and my return to court, the judge showed her bias by mocking my fall. The enclosed plea agreement offer was lost, preventing me from showing it, which I was advised not to do by the advisory council. I stated this as a promise given by them. The prosecutor's letter stated that it was to provide certainty and finality for acceptance of responsibility. This was to lead to a recommended guideline sentence of 46 to 57 months. This range was not merely suggested. The advisory council guaranteed this would be recommended to the judge by the prosecutor, who was held in high esteem by the judge and was considered an honest man. Your office had the forensic psychologist bellow out after her testimony was concluded that I had molested my daughter. This was not solicited nor relevant, and the judge stated that she would not consider it. Then after my sentencing, the prosecutor changed his recommendation to 120 months, to which the judge agreed. The judge then banned me from being held in an Arizona facility, and I was sent 2,000 miles away. She also refused that I be recommended to a medical facility for my mental illness, stating that it wasn't working on the outside, so why should such treatment be provided in the inside of the Bureau of Prisons? After my promised sentence was more than doubled, your officers clapped and cheered. I saw the horror in the ashen-colored faces of Alissa's family. What an example of your professional staff. The advisory council and prosecutor hoodwinked the judge and bait and switched me. Then I was escorted back to my cell by Summershoe and Anderson. Instead of honest dialogue, they taunted me, twitching their eyes and mocking the ABC commentary as they laughed loudly. The appeal attorney stated that the courts do not care how the process got you to sign a contract or a plea agreement. It was still binding. He also said I should have never represented myself under oath. I told the judge I did not remember the pipe bombs, and the manifest was fiction. It was part of my plan to start a fire in front of the Union Hall and blow my head off, hopefully burning the body to bring national attention to Alissa's disappearance, and to give the melodramatic effect necessary to meet the news media's if it bleeds, it leads mentality. No one seemed to care about the suppressed evidence. 1.5 years in prison before my plea agreement, and the fact that I was taken to the emergency room with stroke-like symptoms after I asked the advisory council to resume the case, they declined, stating that the judge would not permit it so late in the proceedings. It also didn't matter to anyone how hard the prison facility made it for a pre-trial detainee to work on his legal work. They were deceptive and torturous, making the environment almost impossible to work in. I'm convinced that these tactics are not by accident, but are designed to discourage the detainee from pursuing his legal rights as stated in the Constitution. Take a close look at how your own office is run. There was no mention on the ABC, Phoenix Police Department, and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reality show of the many decades of bad blood between me and them, nor that a commander of the Cactus Sub called me a vigilante in a Block Watch organizational meeting. How about the time Alissa's biological father, Stephen Strom, tried to assault me with a motor vehicle? Your office refused to submit a warrant using deception and very questionable police tactics. The county attorney's office, however, saw through the cover-up and issued a warrant for his arrest, which is why he left Arizona. His departure had nothing to do with the fact that Barbara and I had no intention of letting him see Alissa. You have a recording and video of Barbara demanding that you investigate Alissa being molested while in Strom's custody. And also, the very bad sunburn both John and Alissa had when they were returned in a 2-seated car driven by a very drunk Stephen Strom. You also have recordings of Strom's abusive phone calls to Barbara and John. I have lost all faith in the legal system, and do not wish to spend the rest of my life trying to prove my innocence. In fact, my innocence is evident in the fact that you could not prove me to be guilty. You botched the investigation of my daughter Alissa's disappearance, exhausting a quickly thrown-together suspect list so you could pursue your narrow-minded notion that it's always the crazy stepfather. I tried to help you in the beginning, because I, more than anyone, wanted to know the facts. Even now, you are not looking to find the truth or have honest dialogue. Nor are you looking for my assistance in a joint investigation of Alissa's disappearance. Neither are you concerned about bringing peace to Alissa's family and friends. Your narrow-minded, botched investigation of the wrong suspect destroyed the chance of ever finding true closure or true justice. When you ran to the media with the intention of destroying me publicly, and your three-ring circus, ABC, Phoenix Police Department, and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reality show, you accomplished one thing. You brought hope to Alissa's family that you knew what you were doing and would bring some closure to Alissa's disappearance. My Hail Mary pass did not get the results I had hoped for. However, many families have waited even longer. You created the media playing field for this investigation, and in blind faith and hope, I fed into it. It's clear to me that you believe I'm the evil one and do not trust you. However, I do agree that something needs to be done. So here's my proposal. Have ABC contact Fox News, and let Fox News set up a program where all guests take a lie detector exam given by independent/neutral Canadian operators who are not pro-police, and invite all parties involved in the investigation. Most especially, bring Anderson and his twitchy-eyed sidekick, and also all of the leads that you dismissed, including ABC, Shanna Lindenberg, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, John Walsh, the prosecutor, ATF Agent Greer, the forensic psychologist, all of my family, Stephen Strom, and the judge. I will answer all of your questions after each of you have answered mine. After all, we all do want the truth, don't we? Otherwise, as the lie detector would show, I have provided you with all of the information I know on the most important of all investigations to me, which you botched up. My statement. I have never harmed my daughter Alissa. I never even spanked her. I made no attempts to anyone about having any information in this case of what happened to Alissa. After her running away and then calling 1 week later, all I'm left with, like everyone else, is speculation. I, like any parent, am left with the empty feeling of not knowing what happened to someone I love, and the guilt of always asking why. Could I have said or done something to change her mind? My manifest was fiction, a dramatic effect to bring light on a very dark situation. Unfortunately, you're pointing at the wrong man. Regards, Michael Turney. End quote. Although my father made it quite clear that he wouldn't interview under any conditions that were actually feasible to accommodate, the case was still moving forward. In September of 2015, I discovered that the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Phoenix actually planned to hold a seminar that December about Alissa. The seminar would feature Dr. Erin Nelson, an expert that participated in my father's bomb trial, and she would be joined by Detective Summershoe and Detective Anderson. The lecture was titled Mini Medical School 3.0, Forensic Psychology, Inside the Criminal Mind. The event details read, quote, "The Forensic Psychology Inside the Criminal Mind presentation will take the audience through a unique scientific experience. Forensic psychologist Dr. Erin Nelson will be accompanied by Detectives Stuart Summershoe and William Anderson of the Phoenix Police Department's Missing and Unidentified Persons Unit. Dr. Nelson will illustrate the interface of psychology/psychiatry and criminal investigation through the presentation of their collaboration on an ongoing missing persons case. Alissa Turney was reported as a runaway, having left her family home on the last day of her junior year. Alissa's stepfather, a former law enforcement officer himself, claimed that his wayward daughter had left a runaway note and was heading to California where she had maternal relatives. This 2001 report was handled as a typical runaway with little, if any, concern. Alyssa's case lingered until 2008, when a convicted murderer claimed responsibility for over 20 homicides and managed to pick Alissa out of a lineup as one of his victims. With new life, the case was revisited, and the family and friends of the missing teen were contacted again. What came of that investigation was unexpected, and the predator appears to have been much closer to Alissa. End quote. I was honestly so excited to see this case presented by professionals that I felt to be the most knowledgeable on the case. I knew it would be somewhat awful and heart-wrenching, but I also knew it would be extremely valuable for my understanding of what actually happened to Alissa. So I got my tickets, and soon there was actually a wait list to get into the event. The following is a chain of emails between me and the detectives. We discussed that seminar, as well as my father's letter. The first email is from Detective Anderson on September 24th, 2015. He states, quote, "Hey Sarah, I was reviewing your father's response letter, and I wanted to get your take on something. Did Mike provide you a copy by chance?" Mike mentioned that I was taunting him at the time of his arrest/detention. He said he was being treated by the paramedics when I began to deride him. I know he has repeated that statement to your brother Mike. Did he by chance share it with you? Detective Anderson. End quote. To which I responded about 30 minutes later, stating, quote, "Hey, Detective Anderson, no, I have not been provided a copy of the letter, and he never really said what he was putting into it. About the ambulance, I don't remember if he told me or not. I'm sure he probably ranted about it at some point, but I don't remember for sure. Sorry I couldn't be more helpful. Best, Sarah Turney." End quote. 6 minutes later, Detective Anderson responds, quote, "I understand. I just wanted to point out that Mike tells his sons that I was present and taunting him. But Summershoe and I were with you at the Family Advocacy Center. This is one of those lies that so deeply trouble us. Why does Mike try so hard to make us the bad guys? What other purpose could the lies serve than to deflect suspicion from him and advance his conspiracy theory/cover-up story? I don't mean to unload on you. I'm just venting with disappointment that Mike won't put an end to this. On another note, are you planning to attend the medical school conference? Detective William Anderson." End quote. I respond about an hour later. Quote, I had never thought about that. But I know that by the time I got to the house, he was gone. So I find it hard to believe that you guys could have gotten there faster than me, considering I left first. Feel free to unload. Of course, it still hurts a lot, but I'm ready for answers. And I'm ready to do whatever I need to find those answers. My father is close to getting out of prison, and I'm done with it eating me up inside. Whatever the truth is, I need to find it. I will most definitely be attending the medical seminar, as well as most likely one or two of my brothers. Is it common to do this type of seminar on an open case? Is the point of the seminar to help spread the word? Are you looking for help analyzing the case by the attendees? Or was this just a subject chosen as a learning tool for students? I'm curious about the intention of the seminar. I've seen these types of seminars in the past. It always appeared to be on like Zodiac Killer or Jack the Ripper. Best, Sarah Turney. End quote. And about 30 minutes later, Detective Anderson responds, quote, "I've never done a seminar before in this context. Summershoe and I offer case analysis and training to other law enforcement agencies, but we don't court civilian audiences. The ABC Primetime Crime thing only aired because your father spoke to them on camera, and we hope some good would come of the exposure for Alyssa's case. This seminar is hosted by the U of A College of Medicine and is not a police event. Our part is to answer any technical questions or details about interactions with Mike. My understanding is that your father is of interest to the forensic psychology crowd, and they will discuss the interplay between the profession and law enforcement investigations. The moderator, Nelson, was involved in the review of your father during his plea deal. We have worked with her in the past and found her to be of great value and very insightful. Her intention will be to further her field of research and to show the value of psychiatry/psychology when applied to criminal investigations. I expect this to appeal to the medical professional crowd. Honestly, it is even more intimidating than the ABC setting. A camera can be ignored. but there are going to be a lot of people for this. Detective William Anderson, end quote. And I write back a few minutes later, quote, thank you for taking the time to explain. Is it possible to get a copy of the letter my father wrote, or could you tell me more about it? Just trying to put these pieces together. Best, Sarah Turney, end quote. And again, a few minutes later, Detective Anderson writes back, quote, I have no objection to the letter's release, but it is considered evidence as the most recent in a string of refusals to speak about Alissa. Let me speak with Summershoe when he is back next week. I'm sure we can work something out. For the U of A seminar, are you and the boys sure you want to witness this? I know you have Alissa hanging over your heads daily, and I can't fathom that weight. I'm concerned about salting the wound, so to speak. What is it you hope to glean from witnessing a forensic evaluation of Mike? All of you should know we are available to discuss this personally. I worry about the impact of an audience like I worry about the comments on an internet article. You don't need the added pain. Detective William Anderson, end quote. To which I respond about an hour later, quote, thank you for your consideration. I appreciate your care for our feelings. Please know that no comment or rehashing of all of this could hurt more than the absence of Alissa does. Anything that provides more exposure to her case is positive in my mind, and I will fight until I get answers for her. I will most definitely be at the seminar. I hope to be present for anything that would mention Alissa, as she would have done the same for me. I feel I have a responsibility to ensure her image is being displayed respectfully and truthfully, as well as be aware of the information covered. Please know that my intentions are to watch the seminar unfold naturally. I hope I will not cause any type of disruption. However, if there is a Q&A and I have a question, I may be compelled to ask it. Please know that I would rather be bombarded with evidence, open old wounds, be yelled at, taunted, or harassed by the public rather than avoid it. I'm ready to face this head on and take on whatever truths are out there. Any type of truth feels a whole lot better than not knowing. Best, Sarah Turney, end quote. I then forward Detective Anderson a link to John Lorden's coverage of Alissa's case. John Lorden is a YouTuber who makes a lot of great videos, and he's the first person to create any type of independent content about Alissa. We spent hours hashing out the details that I could remember of Alissa's disappearance, and I was excited to share it with Detective Anderson. So I wrote, quote, I just wanted to let you know that I've asked for help from a gentleman who makes YouTube videos on strange cases, and he made some videos. It has been very therapeutic and helped me make sense of the plethora of information out there. Best, Sarah Turney, end quote. To which Detective Anderson replies, quote, interesting. Thank you for sharing this. I watched all 3 back to back. I have to restrain myself from commenting or clarifying details. Who from the family do you expect to be in attendance at the U of A forum? Detective William Anderson, end quote. To which I respond, quote, of course, I just wanted you to know what's out there. I expect Mike and myself to be there. James may come, but he hasn't let me know. Best, Sarah Turney, end quote. But then, I got an email stating that the seminar about Alissa was going to be rescheduled for May of 2016. So I went back to the detectives to ask what happened. This email is dated for December 6th of 2015. Quote, hi guys, just curious as to why the seminar was moved. Any updates? Hope you both are having a nice holiday season. Thank you for all that you do. Best, Sarah Turney, end quote. The next morning I received a response from Detective Stuart Summershoe. Quote, hey Sarah, James had some concerns about the lecture, and after consideration, we decided to cancel it. We are always trying to bring attention to Alissa's case, and will continue to do so. However, we felt the lecture format probably isn't the best way to do that. Hope you have a safe and happy holidays. Stuart Summershoe, Detective. End quote. I was upset, and I was sad. I wanted to see this lecture. I wanted these experts to lay out what happened so I could make sense of it. I didn't understand why my brother James didn't feel the same way. But there was nothing I could do, so I dropped it. But a friend of Alissa's didn't. The lecture had been rescheduled for May with a different event description. So this friend, who doesn't wish to be named, wrote to the event organizer to ask if they still planned on discussing Alissa's case. And this is the reply she received. Quote, "Many thanks for your note. Dr. Aaron Nelson will not be discussing the Alissa Turney case. There are recent developments in the case that Dr. Nelson and the Phoenix PD are not able to discuss at this time. Dr. Nelson will be sharing other case files and studies at the event. Please let me know if I can answer any additional questions for you. Have a great afternoon, Allison." End quote. So, I went back to the detectives to ask for clarification as to the reason for cancellation and to inquire about these new developments. On May 3rd, 2016, I wrote the following email. Quote, "Hi guys, I was forwarded over this email from U of A. Just wanted to ask about the new developments. Please let me know when you have a moment. Thanks. Best, Alissa Turney." End quote. The next morning, I received the following response from Detective Summershoe. Quote, "Hey Sarah, sounds like the University of Arizona director might have been making some assumptions. We decided not to discuss Alissa's case for a number of reasons, but primary among those was that it is still an open, ongoing investigation. There are no recent developments that prompted the cancellation. Detective Anderson and I would definitely advise you of any major developments in the case. Take care, Stuart Summershoe, Detective." End quote. To which I respond a few hours later, quote, "Thank you for getting back to me. I don't mean to pester, but Dr. Nelson stated, quote, 'Some developments occurred that made it so we couldn't talk about it,' end quote, referring to the case. Just extremely confusing. If they aren't recent developments, may I ask what developments they are? I'm just trying to get a better grasp of where the case is at. Thank you again for your time. Best, Alissa Turney." End quote. To which Detective Summershoe responded, quote, "Hey Sarah, there is nothing new to report on the case. If something does develop, rest assured that Detective Anderson or I will let you know. Take care, Stuart Summershoe, Detective." End quote. So, was the seminar canceled because of my brother's concerns? Or because Alissa's case was still open? Maybe it was a combination of the both. However, I do want to point out that the original description of the event stated that it was an ongoing investigation. Despite this upset, I proceeded to continue to ask the police questions to further my understanding of the case and offer any assistance I could. On May 11th, 2016, I wrote the following email. Quote, "Quick question. Are there any cell phone pings from Alissa's or my dad's phone from the day she disappeared? Or pings from my dad's phone for a few days after? Best, Alissa Turney." End quote. A few hours later, I received the following response from Detective Anderson. Quote, "Hello, Sarah. The initial report was that Alissa had run away, leaving behind her phone. No location information for the cell phone left behind were obtained. In regards to your father, there was no suspicion of his involvement at that time. Detective William Anderson." End quote. To which I respond, quote, "Thank you. What about the note? Was it ever tested for fingerprints? Best, Alissa Turney." End quote. To which Detective Anderson responded, quote, "No forensic test of the note due to time passed and multiple handlers. I have never doubted that Alissa wrote that note. What I question is the timing. I believe Mike had Alissa write the note following an argument and a telephone conversation with your aunt. The details of the note fit that event more than what happened on her last day. Detective William Anderson." End quote. A few months went by, and on August 2nd, 2016, I received the following email from Detective Anderson. Quote, "Sarah, as of Monday, August 1st, 2016, I am no longer a detective with the Missing and Unidentified Persons Unit. Detective Summershoe will remain as your point of contact. Detective William Anderson." End quote. Although the investigation seemed to be dwindling at this point, Detective Summershoe appeared to press on in Alissa's case. While obtaining records for a different case at one of the high schools Alissa attended, he asked the staff if they remembered Alissa, and they did. But they stated that they remembered our father much more, stating that he was, quote, "scary, demanding, and inappropriate," end quote, and treated Alissa more like a wife than a daughter, and would always ask if she was seeing any boys. In February of 2017, I found a VHS tape among the home videos released to me by the police. It was labeled May 27, 2001, H&H Concrete Slabs. This date is just 10 days after Alissa disappeared. But when I played the tape, whatever was on it had been taped over by a movie. So I contacted Detective Summershoe to inform him of what I found. And this was his response. Quote, "Yes, there were a number of cryptic, unexplained things in your father's possessions. For instance, there were videos of open desert he took which might be significant or not. H&H Concrete Slabs and the connection to Alissa's disappearance is unknown. It might be related to the case, or it could be something your father was working on in reference to one of his lawsuits, or it could be something else entirely. Unfortunately, the key lies with your father, and he refuses to cooperate. Stuart Summershoe, Detective." End quote. To which I respond, quote, "Hi, Detective. I understand that my father is the key to this case. Is there anything I can do to elicit some type of confession? Wire me up. Make me say whatever you want. I'm not afraid of my father. I would be more than happy to help in getting him to speak if I am able. I understand you aren't able to dig up the entire desert, but I won't rest until we have some answers. Please let me know if I can help in any way. Sarah Turney." End quote. To which Detective Summershoe quickly responds, quote, "Sarah, because your father has invoked his rights, I cannot have a third party question him for me. So no, I cannot send you in with a wire to ask him questions. That being said, if your father in the future ever makes any incriminating statements to you, I hope you would let me know. I share your frustration in trying to find Alissa. Your father has dangled tidbits. Desert Center, for example. But they are not specific enough for a realistic search. As for the Concrete Slabs Company, I will do some follow-up on that and let you know. Stuart Summershoe, Detective." End quote. And 9 days later, on February 17th, 2017, I write back to Detective Summershoe to follow up. Quote, "Hi, Detective Summershoe. I just wanted to touch base and see if anything came of the Concrete Company. Thank you so much for your time and attention on this matter. Sarah Turney." End quote. And on February 23rd, 2017, I get a response from Detective Summershoe. Quote, "Hey, Sarah. Sorry for the delay in my reply. I was off a few days. I haven't had the opportunity to yet follow up on that lead. Hopefully soon. I also wanted to make you aware that there has been some restructuring in the missing persons unit, and I am no longer assigned to Alissa's case. The new case agent is Detective Cooper. I'll let you know when I get to follow up on that lead. Take care. Stuart Summershoe, Detective." End quote. To which I respond, quote, "Hi, Detective Summershoe. Thank you for letting me know. I look forward to hearing the results of the Concrete Company tape. I will reach out to the new detective. I'm sorry to see Anderson and now you go from the case. I thank you both for your years of service to my family and to Alissa. May I ask, was there a particular reason you can share with me for the switch? It just seems particularly odd to happen with my father's release in less than 1 week. As you can probably tell, I'm reaching at straws to make any sense of this situation. Any clarity would be greatly appreciated. Again, thank you for your time and effort. Sarah Turney." End quote. To which Detective Summershoe responded, quote, "Hey, Sarah, it has nothing to do with your father's release. As you may have seen in the news, Phoenix police are in a staffing crisis, and it was decided to send a number of detectives back to patrol to help deal with this. One of the affected cases was the missing person unit. Because of this, the cold case unit, myself and another detective, were folded back into response, dealing with new cases. This happened for both cold case homicide and missing persons. New cases are assigned alphabetically by the missing person's last name, and I inherited a case queue near the beginning of the alphabet. It's my hope that as manpower issues stabilize in the future, cold case will be brought back. Letting go of Alissa's case was not easy, but I have to follow the directives I'm given. Hopefully we can find resolution for Alissa and your family. Stuart Summershoe, Detective." End quote. Detective Summershoe being reassigned took me by surprise. I was confused, but I wasn't particularly concerned. And that's because I believed that my father would be arrested for Alissa's murder after his release from prison. So I assumed that perhaps the detectives had been reassigned because there was nothing left to do. After all, the case had been investigated thoroughly, and they planned on pressing charges. I assumed Detective Anderson and Detective Summershoe's talents were being used elsewhere because Alissa's case had been closed. But 7 days after Detective Summershoe was reassigned, on March 2nd, 2017, my father was released from his prison sentence. And much to my dismay, no charges were pressed in relation to Alissa's case. I was sure that I was mistaken, that perhaps they didn't mean he would be arrested literally the day he got out. So I tried to wait patiently for justice to be served. And in May, I asked to speak on the phone with the new detective, Kimberly Cooper, and this was her response. Quote, "Hello, Sarah. Thank you for taking the time to email me. I am not available. However, feel free to email any questions you have and I will try my best to answer what I can. As you may or may not have been told by Detective Summershoe, our cold case unit was dissolved. And we are down several detectives due to manpower shortages on the streets, in addition to having increased retirements and our caseloads having increased substantially due to all of this. I have several exigent cases I am working simultaneously, as are other detectives who are left in our detail. When I have information to share in reference to Alissa's cold case, I will be sure to let you know, but right now I do not. Again, please feel free to email me any information you feel is helpful. I want to assure you that Alissa's cold case will remain open and we will continue to work diligently. Thank you for your understanding. Detective Kimberly Cooper." End quote. Call me stupid, but I was still hopeful that they were just busy trying to make this arrest happen. I didn't see it going any other way. The detective spent years communicating my father's perceived involvement in Alissa's case to me. And they worked Alissa's case for almost 10 years. They looked me in the eye and told me that my father was sexually abusing Alissa, that he was the last one to see her, and they reiterated that it's usually that person who is responsible in these instances. They went on ABC 2020 to discuss my father's suspicious behavior. They told me that they believed my father forced Alissa to write the runaway note, and that they didn't believe the phone call a week later came from her either. The chief of police even wrote a letter stating that it was believed that my father had more information than what he was telling. And on top of that, the detectives were ready to partner with a forensic psychologist to tell a totally sold-out audience that, quote, "What came of that investigation was unexpected, and the predator appears to have been much closer to Alissa," end quote. I could be wrong, but I don't believe I am misconstruing the level of certainty that I was given that my father would be tried for the murder of Alissa. I waited for 7 months for the justice system to work its magic, but it didn't. So I asked for an in-person meeting in October of 2017 to discuss the status of Alissa's case, and it was scheduled for a few weeks later. But at this point, I was losing hope before that meeting could occur. And I couldn't resist the temptation to speak to my father any longer. If he was not going to be interviewed by police or arrested and have to answer for what happened to Alissa in court, I was going to look him in the eye and get those answers for myself. So I called him to ask if he'd meet with me in person to discuss everything. And he agreed. And what he said to me on that day would ignite a fire in me to get justice for Alissa that has not been extinguished to this day. Next time on Voices for Justice. I didn't want to come here today.
I didn't either.
I believe it. Why are there so many things you didn't tell us?
I don't want to look at my daughter who thinks I'm the biggest monster on the planet. Scared of what, me?
Yeah, I'm not scared of you.
Be there at the deathbed, Sarah, and I'll give you all the honest answers you want to hear.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Brittany. I actually have 2 questions. When or if justice is served, what do you plan on doing afterward? And have you considered or have you had a private investigator?
Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for your question. After I get justice for Alissa, I want to continue the podcast and help other people achieve their dreams of getting justice. Whether that be a missing person, wrongful conviction, wrongful death, I just want to help other people right some type of wrong and get their own justice. And no, I've never hired a private investigator. I would consider it. However, I truly do believe that one of the greatest detriments in Alissa's case was the fact that so much evidence was lost before the police began investigating. And I wouldn't think a private investigator could recover anything the police couldn't from those years. But I get this suggestion a lot, and I think it's something I'm willing to consider if I thought it could be of any help to the investigation, or even just to clarify why some of these things even happened. If you have a question about the case or the podcast, please submit an audio file with your name and where you're from to sarah@voicesforjusticepodcast.com. Voices for Justice is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Alissa Turney. If you want to learn more about Alissa's story and how you can help with the case, visit justiceforalissa.com. And if you love the show, it would really help if you gave me a rating and review in your podcast player. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.